Hello Internet, my name is Daniel, and I love movies, at least when Hollywood doesn't totally ruin them. And in this video we're going to be taking a look back at Dreamworks' 2003 adventure movie, Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. An interesting fact about this movie is that it was almost a Disney movie. You see, during his time at Disney, Jeffrey Katzenberg suggested the idea of an animated Sinbad movie to the then Disney CEO, Michael Eisner, but Eisner rejected it. Thus, when Katzenberg was helping to form Dreamworks, he brought this and several other scrapped Disney ideas to their animation division. This is also why the Ants and Bugs Life controversy is a thing. By the way, note to self, cover the Ants and Bugs Life controversy. But anyway, Sinbad was directed by Patrick Gilmore and Tim Johnson, and stars Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones as Sinbad, the lovable rogue, or black-hearted scoundrel depending on who you ask, and Marina, the adventurous stowaway, respectively. The film had a strong opening weekend, even competing with the likes of the third Terminator movie as well as Finding Nemo, but it really fell off in the second weekend at the box office and beyond, earning a modest $80.7 million. DreamWorks lost $125 million on the film, and obviously that was more than a bit disappointing for the filmmakers. Katzenberg was even quoted as saying, "I think the idea of a traditional story being told using traditional animation is likely a thing of the past." But is that true? Why did Sinbad take such a loss? Well, it may be partially because the basic plot of the film is not too different from any other typical seafaring adventure story. Basically, Sinbad and his crew of thieves are trying to steal something called the Book of Peace from Sinbad's childhood friend, Prince Proteus, who at the time is transporting it to the city of Syracuse. The Book of Peace has magical powers that keep the peace between the 12 cities, though not much more about how the book does this, or even how it got its magical powers in the first place, is ever explained. Our villain of the movie is Eris, the Greek god of chaos, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. And once she sees Sinbad chasing Proteus and attempting to steal the Book of Peace, she hatches a plan that will allow her to frame Sinbad and steal the book herself, thus bringing chaos to the 12 cities. This plan works and Sinbad is sentenced to death, but Proteus steps in to take his place in return for Sinbad venturing to Eris' homeworld of Tartarus to retrieve the book. The Council of Syracuse gives Sinbad 10 days to come back with the book, and the adventure is on. So yeah, pretty typical seafaring adventure story. But the movie's struggles at the box office may also have something to do with the fact that the animation in the movie is really hit or miss. Some of the CGI creatures can be very distracting, as you'll see in a minute, but some of the animation on the characters and the ideas can actually be really interesting. But I'm going on a bit too long here, that's probably way more background than you ever wanted to know about this movie, so I'll just close with this. Sinbad currently has a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, but is that score justified? Let's find out. As I said, the movie opens with Eris, the Greek goddess of chaos, seeing Sinbad chasing Prince Proteus' ship to Syracuse, and she sends one of her many ocean minions falling from the sky to intercept them. And this is the first instance of really creative and interesting ideas in the film. The filmmakers could easily have had Eris control an actual sea monster that was already lurking in the ocean and use it to attack Sinbad and Proteus. But no, she's a goddess, so instead they decide to have her create her creatures from the constellations in the sky, which is a pretty neat idea if you ask me. Unfortunately for our heroes, they didn't see the creature falling from the sky because they're too focused on their own earthly squabbles to pay attention to too much else. Sinbad and his crew are looking to steal the Book of Peace in order to retire to Fiji, and as far as the introduction to Sinbad goes, it's pretty fun. In a bit of a wacky action scene, we see Sinbad flying from ship to ship along with his crew and beating up the prince's guards. We also see some nice swashbuckling action and some only possible in Looney Tunes Land moves on Sinbad's part. My gosh, that guy is agile, I wish I could do that.
Did you catch that last move? Pretty cool, huh?
Show off. We are then introduced to Proteus, a noble prince voiced by Joseph Fiennes, who wonders where Sinbad has been for the past several years. However, despite their, at this point anyway, implied past, Sinbad stays focused, saying,
Hey, love to stop and catch up, but I've got things to do, places to go, stuff to steal.
Proteus goes on to try and talk Sinbad out of stealing the book, reminding him how they used to be friends and how the Book of Peace protects all in the 12 cities. Somehow. I mean, again, this is never explained. And this plea proves ineffective because Sinbad realized just how much the people of Syracuse would pay to get the book back. Sinbad enters the captain's quarters where the book is stored and Proteus steps in to stop him. They fight and oh my god! What is that? Is that supposed to be a squid or a Kraken or what is that? You know, I actually ended up looking this up online, and according to the wiki, it's actually a kraken-like creature, but if so, that's the least intimidating kraken-like creature I've ever seen. I mean, just look, even the dog's not intimidated by it. Okay, all joking aside, the CGI on this kraken, I guess, is obviously a little bit dated, but I can't be too harsh on it. After all, the movie was released in 2003, and on a budget of only $60 million, which was really not that big at the time. Especially when you compare that budget to the budgets of other movies from that year like The Matrix Reloaded, which had about $150 million to work with, or even another animated film like Finding Nemo, which had $94 million to work with, and took place largely underwater. And animation is one of those things that's really dependent on budget. It takes a lot of time and effort to get something to look right when you've got things like light reflecting off it from ever-changing angles, gravity's effect on movement, getting colors to look right, and just tons of other factors that can affect how real CGI looks. And when you stop and think about it, it's actually quite amazing how the filmmakers of movies like the live-action Jungle Book today are able to make the CGI look good. So yeah, the Kraken's pretty distracting, but I'm not going to be too harsh on it. Sinbad, however, is under no such restrictions and decides that he's had enough distracting CGI for one day.
Well, I see you're busy, so, stay in touch.
Wait! You're just gonna run away?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on now! The battle continues, and just after one nameless crewman gets eaten, Sinbad launches an explosive into the air which the Kraken promptly eats. Yeah, Sinbad didn't shoot the bomb into the Kraken's mouth. No. The Kraken just shot its tongue out, caught the bomb, and swallowed it. Voluntarily. Boy, it's lucky that this Kraken was an idiot, or else this battle could have gone very differently. This, of course, leads to the crewman that was swallowed getting shot back out of the Kraken's mouth, just like in almost every other movie featuring a giant sea creature, along with a fair bit of its mucus. And I was going to make a Pirates of the Caribbean joke right here, however, this clip is just a heck of a lot funnier. I love how the soldier was basically just eaten, and the moment he gets spit out, he doesn't try and clean himself off or anything, he doesn't even sit there and marvel at the fact that he's somehow still alive. No, he just gets so angry, he yells, grabs his sword, and rushes at the thing that just ate him. It's brilliant, I love it. Anyway, Sinbad taunts the Kraken into trying to eat him, and pins its tongue to the deck of the ship with his sword. Again, thank goodness this Kraken isn't very bright. Sinbad proceeds to cut the rigging and drop the remains of the crow's nest on the Kraken's head. With presumably its dying breath, the Kraken drags Sinbad underwater with it to meet Eris. She persuades him to steal the Book of Peace and bring it back to her in return for sparing his life and making him rich. Oh, and the Kraken's still alive. I mean, it doesn't matter, I just thought I'd mention it. After basically getting impaled by the ship, it's still fine. So, that's a thing. Anyway, Proteus gets the Book of Peace safely back to Syracuse, and Sinbad and his crew receive a somewhat less than warm greeting from the king's men. But after they leave their weapons at the front entrance, most of them are allowed in. Except for that one crewman who spends the entire time removing his weapons only to finish the moment that they leave.
Jet, pack it up.
What? I just put the...
Still not as funny as Elizabeth Swann's weapon removal scene in Pirates 3. Meanwhile, Proteus introduces Sinbad to Lady Marina, which, for some reason, makes Sinbad want to leave without getting the Book of Peace like he originally planned. Well, I suppose Proteus did just get back into town. Maybe he didn't have time to shower after getting the Kraken's mucus sprayed all over him. Then why isn't the mucus still on him? I don't know, you come up with a better explanation! And yeah, I know, it's really because of Sinbad's history with Marina and the love triangle between them and Proteus. But that's not going to be explained for almost 40 minutes, and even when it is explained, it isn't done very well. However, all is not well in Syracuse as we catch a glimpse of Eris sitting on the palace roof during Sinbad's departure. And she's clearly got some devious plan up her sleeve.
Oh, this is just too easy.
Later that night, we see Prince Proteus and Lady Marina discussing Marina's dreams of traveling far and wide, as well as all the magic and wonder of the sea.
It's beautiful.
It is. I don't like sand.
Oh, no. Oh, God, no, not again. Not again. There's a lot of great things about growing up in the age of the internet, but I've seen that clip so many times that has gotten to the point that I can't watch a character talk about the environment, or even watch movies with strong environmental themes without that clip popping into my head. I recently rewatched Once Upon a Forest, to see if I'd want to do a review on it, and it was pure torture. Because the whole time, I felt like I was watching one of those YouTube videos where they just repeat a clip over and over and over again for 10 hours straight, except this time it was somehow worse because Once Upon a Forest was playing on top of it all! Anyway, Proteus asks Marina to marry him, but before she can respond, they are interrupted by the king, who needs Marina's help as an ambassador to deal with the delegates from the other cities. Then we cut to Eris stealing the Book of Peace disguised as Sinbad. And again, the creativity of the animation in this movie is pretty spectacular here. They could have just had Eris appear as Sinbad, fight the guard, and then take the book, but instead they have her create a Sinbad puppet, and then slip into it before taking out the guard and stealing the book. And I mean, how do you even think of something like that? It's just incredibly creative. And on top of that, it's kinda symbolic. She's using Sinbad as her puppet. Just a very nice scene. Anyway, the closing of the book causes a portion of the palace to start cracking, and of course, Sinbad is arrested for the theft. He denies Proteus's accusations and quickly guesses that Eris set him up when Proteus shows Sinbad his own knife, which was found at the scene of the crime. Sinbad manages to convince Proteus that he did not, in fact, steal the book, and as a result, Proteus actually takes Sinbad's place by right of substitution for execution during the town trial. This ploy, however, is of course not without its risks, because...
Proteus, you realize that if Sinbad does not return, you will be put to death in his place.
But it's a risk worth taking to Proteus because he claims that either Sinbad stole the Book of Peace or Eris has it in her home realm of Tartarus. And either way, Sinbad is Syracuse's only chance of recovering the book. Which is of course very logically sound because it's not like the city of Syracuse has its own army or anything that could set sail for Tartarus. So yeah, ignoring that little oversight, the city gives Sinbad 10 days to return the book and sends him on his way. Unfortunately for Proteus, Sinbad is not the best friend in the world, and he's not about to set sail for Tartarus.
So, any idea how we actually get to Tartarus?
Tartarus? Oh, no. People get killed in Tartarus.
So where are we going?
Fiji.
But luckily for Proteus, Marina managed to sneak onto the ship, and she has an absolutely airtight, bulletproof plan to make sure that Sinbad holds up his end of the bargain.
Yep, this'll do. But not for first class.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe it's not the most well-thought-out plan in the world, but at least she was prepared enough to bribe him and the crew with just enough jewels to get her a spot in the dog's bunk. Meanwhile, Eris sees them sailing towards Tartarus and decides to lay a couple of traps along the way, including sirens that render the crew useless.
Men.
Well said! Marina and Spike manage to steer the ship through the pass and save the crew along the way. While this was a good showing for Marina's character, I didn't really like this action scene as much as I did the first one, mainly because the rest of the characters are not really themselves. But that's more of a personal taste. I've never really been a fan of the mind control or other devices that make the characters act, well, for lack of a better term, out of character. It just always felt a little gimmicky to me, because I always saw it as just a way to get a character to do something really weird that they would not do ordinarily, but it never really contributed to the plot, or any of the character arcs. And this one in particular really seems to be out of place, mainly because it feels like it was just thrown in at the last minute because the filmmakers were worried that the audience would get bored without another action scene. Thankfully, it's over pretty quickly, and we can get back to the movie.
Still think a ship's no place for a woman?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh wait, never mind.
I mean, look at my ship. This railing was hand-carved mahogany. And here, these moldings came all the way from Damascus. Do you have any idea what I went through to steal these? That's exactly why women shouldn't drive.
Are you crazy? I saved your life!
Okay, this is something that I haven't mentioned up to this point, but there are a lot of awkward and kind of bad one-liners from Sinbad in this movie. And this one in particular was very cringeworthy to me. With the exception of the genie from Aladdin, I haven't seen a character that's been able to make referential jokes of today, like, say, women are bad drivers, work in an older setting. They're just very distracting and they take you out of the movie, and usually they're not even that funny. And I think that we can all agree that if it weren't for the late Robin Williams' fantastic performance as the genie, it wouldn't have worked nearly as well there either. These jokes also kind of make Sinbad look like a bit of a jerk, which I'll admit can work in some movies. I don't feel that the main character always has to be the most likable guy in the world, but in a simple, kid-friendly adventure movie, you probably don't want your main character coming off like this.
And you chipped the paint! Right here, look at it. That's more than a little scratch.
Later, they arrive on an island in order to fix up the ship. Or, I say an island, it turns out to be yet another gigantic sea creature. Not much happens here as the crew sprints back onto the ship and the sea creature quickly swims away. This gives Sinbad the idea to throw a rope around it and use it to pull the ship forward. And the sea creature pulls the ship forward through the night with many of the sailors getting seasick as a result. Later that morning, we get back to character development, and Marina asks Sinbad how he and Proteus became friends.
How did you two ever meet?
Running for my life, as usual. A couple of angry thugs had cornered me outside the palace walls. You get the idea. And then, suddenly, there was a fourth blade. It was Proteus. We were best friends from that day forward.
Now obviously this friendship didn't last very long as both men, to quote Sinbad, took different paths, with one becoming a thief and the other a noble prince. And retelling this story must have made Sinbad's blood run really cold because he freezes the entire ocean. Oh wait, that was Eris? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
For crying out loud, what next?
You know, Sinbad, you make an excellent point. So far we've had to deal with a huge CGI kraken squid monster thing, sirens, but not for long, some other fantastic sea creature that was off the screen faster than I could actually explain anything about it, and now a frozen ocean, which I can only assume will lead to another battle with some fantastic beast. Ah yes, there it is, right on cue. How far are we into the movie, by the way? 44 minutes? Man, that's quite a lot of action scenes for just 44 minutes. With that being said, however, this action scene was probably my favorite one of the entire film. They do a nice job of building up the threat of this snowbird as it appears off in the distance. It captures Marina, leading to a pretty thrilling rescue and escape sequence through the ice caverns and down this gigantic cliff. Oh, and it also has this whoopsie-daisy of a line.
Hey, I've got this.
Oh, great. He can pick his teeth when he's done with us.
Yeah, okay, see, in the hands of an expert, a good knife has 1,001 uses. Ooh.
And yes, the cliff does crumble into the ocean after the escape, thus allowing Sinbad to set sail again. And it's kinda convenient, but hey, the escape part was still good. And at long last, we've reached the edge of the world. What? The edge of the world. It's practically the front step of Tartarus. But doesn't that mean that the movie is saying the world is flat? Like the Flat Earth Society would have us believe? Yeah, I know. And who said you can't learn anything from movies? Anyway, Sinbad makes a few adjustments to the sails and the ship flies off the edge of the world and Sinbad and Marina swing into Tartarus. Now, Tartarus is a pretty neat place. It is, of course, the realm of chaos, so there's naturally a lot of weird things going on there, like the sand flowing like waves of the sea, stone soldiers and ships buried underneath it, and of course Eris's pets and the goddess herself. Sinbad asks for the Book of Peace before Eris reveals her true plans.
No. Proteus, you knew he would take my place.
What a clever little man you are.
You thought I'd run. Then Proteus would die, and Syracuse would be
left without the next rightful king and tumble into glorious chaos. You humans are so predictable. Proteus couldn't help being ever so noble, and you couldn't help betraying him.
After explaining to Sinbad how Proteus is going to die because he saw something in Sinbad, in this case the heart of a noble hero, that just wasn't there. But Sinbad doesn't believe himself to be a bad guy, so Eris challenges him to a game. She says she will ask Sinbad a question, and if he answers honestly, he will win and get the Book of Peace.
So here's my question, Sinbad. If you don't get the book, will you go back to die?
Sinbad answers saying that he will go back to die, but Eris, of course, calls him on it, causing the floor to crumble from underneath him and sending him and Marina back to the edge of the earth. And after a brief scene where Marina tells Sinbad to run away and confess her love for him, we cut to Proteus walking towards the execution stand, and a well-timed throw by Sinbad saves Proteus's head. Man, they must have sailed really fast to get back there on time. Anyway, Sinbad takes Proteus's place on the execution stand, but before he loses his head, Eris shows up because...
My game has rules, Sinbad. I'll ask you a question. One simple question. If you answer truthfully, the book is yours.
Give me your word.
Oh, all right. You have my word as a goddess.
Yeah, even though gods are all-powerful, they're still bound by their words. Apparently. So Eris returns the Book of Peace and it's a happy ending for all. Well, maybe except for Proteus. He realized that Marina had fallen for Sinbad and tells her to follow her heart and sail the seas. But he seems to be at peace with it, so maybe he's fine. And that was Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. And what did I think about it? Well, there's definitely a lot to like about this movie. The animation can be pretty stunning at some points, particularly when it comes to Eris. And there's a good amount of creativity as well. Some of the fight scenes are pretty exciting, with the escape from the snowbird being the standout in my opinion, and Michelle Pfeiffer delivers a delightfully wicked performance as Eris. And I know that during production Pfeiffer had a lot of trouble with the character, and even told the director that they could fire her if it wasn't working out, but I'm glad they didn't because she absolutely nailed this role. But that's not to say that the movie doesn't have its drawbacks as well. While some of the fight scenes are good, there are others that are either over too quick to be very engaging, or just feel shoehorned in. And the romance between Sinbad and Marina is there, but it leaves a lot to be desired. It's another one of those, they hate each other, so of course that means they're gonna end up falling in love romances that we've just seen done 1,000,001 times before. Overall, Sinbad's not one of my favorite movies of all time, but neither is it among the worst I've ever seen. If you're in the mood for a fun little action movie with some great performances and animation, I'd give it a watch. Otherwise, you're probably fine just skipping it. But that'll do it for me today. But this is only the start of the true review experience because I want to hear what you thought of the movie. Let me know down in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you haven't already, and subscribe. And are there any other movies you'd like to see me review? Leave those down in the comments as well, and I may just add them to the list. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and have a great day.